who recently returned for the first time in 8 years, and CM Punk, who's been described most of all out of anyone that Paul Heyman has represented over the last year and a half as a Paul Heyman guy. Paul Heyman probably would not be considered as one of the top 5 greatest wrestling managers of all time. There was an interesting article posted on WWE.com a while back, and it listed some of the greatest wrestling managers of all time in the last 25 years. Where does Paul Heyman rank on this list? It's very interesting to see where WWE have placed Paul Heyman on this list, and I think that the position of Heyman on this list is arguably accurate, and I think it goes along with all the contributions that Heyman has given to this wrestling business as both a manager and a promoter over the years. This is a guy who used to do wrestling promos for Extreme Championship Wrestling in the basement of his parents' house while his parents used to do household chores, and that shows you just how diligent of a worker Paul Heyman was in this business, either as a consummate performer or as a promoter, and I think that has a lot to do with how WWE.com ranked him on the list of some of the greatest wrestling managers of the last quarter of a century. He has managed some of the greatest champions of the last quarter of a century, and the managerial services he's provided for CM Punk has a lot to do with how far Paul Heyman has gotten, with the reputation of being described as recently by John Bradshaw Layfield one of the greatest wrestling managers of all time. And I think that this run that CM Punk is having with Paul Heyman, both his run as Paul Heyman with his manager, and of course this little feud that Paul Heyman has started with Punk with his Paul Heyman representatives like Curtis Axel recently on Raw, is going to be something that wrestling fans, and especially fans of CM Punk, are going to remember CM Punk for doing years after this is all put behind us. I think this is great for CM Punk's character in the WWE, and this could get him on the road to being a future WWE champion and probably have not as much of an impressive reign as he previously had of holding the title for over 434 days, but with his recent match he made in a special appearance on SmackDown with world champion Alberto Del Rio, and with how far CM Punk has come since his return in Chicago, defeating CM Punk in Punk Jericho 3, or defeating Chris Jericho rather, in Punk Jericho 3 in Chicago at WWE Payback. I mean, there's really no reason why CM Punk shouldn't get at least one more opportunity at the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and right now all things are pointing in the direction of CM Punk challenging Alberto Del Rio or whoever the world champion is by the time Punk solidifies himself as the number one contender for the world championship. The way I see things going for Punk in the Money in the Bank All-Stars match, featuring a select few superstars from Raw and SmackDown, everyone from Randy Orton to Christian to RVD, CM Punk himself included, will be featured in this Money in the Bank All-Stars match. Really disappointed how Chris Jericho will be facing Ryback instead of being featured as one of the All-Star superstars from either Raw or SmackDown in the WWE Championship Contract Money in the Bank ladder match. I'll be talking about that in a future video blog for my YouTube channel, the new YouTube One channel of HW Entertainment, because I think that Chris Jericho has really become one of those consummate performers over the last number of months, ever since at least his match with CM Punk at WWE Payback, with how much of a pure wrestling match that was. All 3 Punk Jericho matches can be described as some of the best pure wrestling matches we have seen in quite some time, and I think that with how Jericho's become one of those consummate performers that you can rely on, which is an extreme rarity these days in the wrestling business, I think Jericho is really getting the shitty end of the deal when it comes to being booked on these pay-per-views. Nowhere in my mind does Jericho belong in a match with Ryback. Jericho needs to be in this All-Stars Money in the Bank ladder match. If someone like Kane, who's been with wrestling for over 16 years as a consummate performer in the WWE, and even new talent superstars, even Christian, who's been there for over a number of years as well, is in this ladder match. Why isn't Jericho there? It's beyond me why. The way I see this going without Jericho in this match is it'll come down to RVD and CM Punk, and the reason why I say that is because CM Punk, in a recent promo involving all 7 superstars in this Money in the Bank All-Stars ladder match with the WWE Championship contract to be cashed in anytime the winner wants over the next year, 365 days, CM Punk challenged Rob Van Dam. He called him out. Rob Van Dam has been absent ever since these promos of RVD's return in Philadelphia as part of the 2013 Money in the Bank pay-per-view. So I see this Money in the Bank ladder match coming down to RVD and CM Punk jockeying for position at the top of the ladder after the other 5 participants in this match have been taken out. Then Brock Lesnar comes out, tips the ladder over on CM Punk, probably sends CM Punk crashing through a number of tables, and then RVD capitalizes, aligning himself probably with Curtis Axel and Brock Lesnar as part of Paul Heyman's faction as the replacement for CM Punk. This will set up for CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar after CM Punk turns on Paul Heyman, because a lot of Paul Heyman's guys have been turned on by Paul Heyman himself over the years. We saw it with Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series in 2002 when Big Show became a Paul Heyman guy for the first time ever in his career, and we saw that history played off of in 2006 when ECW was brought back as a third brand extension in the WWE. Paul Heyman and Big Show realigning because of the reincarnation of ECW and the fact that RVD was suspended for smoking weed and doing some unprofessional things for his character and career in the WWE, forcing RVD to drop both the WWE and ECW championship and be suspended for, I believe, what was a total of over 90 days. We have seen so many Paul Heyman guys screwed over by Paul Heyman over the years. Why isn't CM Punk screwed over yet? Obviously because they're building up for CM Punk to be the one who's been screwed over the most in years out of every Paul Heyman guy who has double-crossed Paul Heyman, because Paul Heyman believes that if it wasn't for him, some of these guys like RVD, the Dudley Boys, Sandman, Sabu, the list goes on and on and on. If it weren't for Paul Heyman in his mind, these guys would have gotten nowhere in the professional wrestling business. And my point that I'm trying to make about this is, how can you argue the fact that these guys wouldn't have gotten anywhere without Paul Heyman? Paul Heyman gave them the money to finance their characters. He pushed them diligently, and he was the one that believed in them before their first ever pay-per-view went live on pay-per-view, headlined by Terry Funk and the Funk Brothers. Paul Heyman cut a very interesting promo that was included as part of the footage that was distributed for Beyond the Mat. He said that this is our chance to tell everybody that we do have a chance to survive in the professional wrestling business and stand out. This is our chance to say, fuck you, you're wrong, fuck you, we're right. And they did that with the first ever ECW pay-per-view, Barely Legal, and they got so far with it. They had a number of pay-per-views after and many years of success. So how can you argue the fact that some of these guys would have gotten somewhere without Paul Heyman? Because a lot of them, at least over 75% of Paul Heyman's roster for the original ECW is what I'm talking about here, probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere without Paul Heyman, because he was the one who believed in them. To reiterate that promo, he said that this was their chance to say, fuck you, you're wrong, fuck you, we're right, and they charged $20 for the distribution of the ECW pay-per-view in 1996, 1997, and they got further than what they had anticipated, and it was because of that that ECW saw many years of success before it ever went out of business around the same time that WCW went out of business. And even when they did go out of business, WWE hired probably more ECW superstars than they did WCW superstars. So you really can't argue the fact that without Paul Heyman, some of these guys probably would have gotten somewhere, because honestly they probably would have never gotten anywhere without Paul Heyman. And I think that really Brock Lesnar and CM Punk are perfect examples of two people who probably wouldn't have gotten nowhere in this business without Paul Heyman. Like him or not, Paul Heyman is a genius, and in years to come we're going to see Paul Heyman continue to benefit probably even more superstars, especially new talented superstars. The example of that is what he's doing right now for Curtis Axel. I mean, he's doing a tremendous amount for the new Intercontinental Champion, Curtis Axel, who may be a ripoff of his father and his grandfather right now, with just how similar his character is to characters like Larry the Axe Hennig and Mr. Perfect that we have seen over the years. It's just frightening how resemblance Curtis Axel is to Mr. Perfect or Curtis Axel, but at least I think it's just incredible how we are seeing Paul Heyman benefit these new talented superstars. In years to come, he's only going to continue to do the same kind of thing. As a lead up to Lesnar versus CM Punk, I do see CM Punk facing the Intercontinental Champion Curtis Axel, with probably CM Punk knocking off Curtis Axel and becoming one of the first superstars to do so, because if you notice, Curtis Axel is really undefeated since premiering as this character on WWE television, so he has to be knocked off. And because CM Punk's only a little bit of momentum since his return is a victory over Chris Jericho, and a better part of the promos have gone to CM Punk leading up to Jericho versus Punk at WWE Payback, with the only little bit of momentum that CM Punk has been able to get is over Chris Jericho. I think that his first little bit of momentum since his victory over Chris Jericho will come at the expense of Curtis Axel, and then what we will see is CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar in a wrestling match that wrestling fans have wanted for months. For at least the last 7 or 8 months, wrestling fans have wanted to see CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar. Now, if you look at the tail of the tape, CM Punk doesn't really have much of an advantage against Brock Lesnar, but the thing that CM Punk does have going for him, with this frightening tail of the tape being so advantaged to going to Brock Lesnar here, is the fact that CM Punk is trained in Jiu-Jitsu, which is one of the most deadly forms of combat that anyone could ever be trained in, and CM Punk is quicker than Brock Lesnar, and this is what CM Punk is going to have to do. CM Punk is going to have to use his speed. He's going to have to rely on the small advantages that he has against someone like Brock Lesnar, and also history has really told a story of how smaller wrestlers have always overcome adversity. Look at all the times that Rey Mysterio was